Hi, hello, and welcome back to the Future in Finance CeMAP Study Podcast, where if you haven't been here before, we try and help you get through your CeMAP studies as painlessly as possible, although sometimes that can be a challenge. And in this episode, we are going to be looking at your CeMAP 2 and 3 studies, and we are specifically looking at Chapter 2 of your big textbook. So this is the textbook for your CeMAP 2 and 3. It is entitled Mortgages, and this topic is entitled Types of Borrower. I'm Charlotte.
I'm Maria.
And we do this often, so welcome back. I don't think anybody's going to be tuning into this one for the first time. It'd be a very random one for you to be doing. So just to clarify before we jump in, I suppose this topic is in relation to the first part of your CeMAP 2 exam and all of your CeMAP 3 exam, because that's not broken up. And we do this every week. So
once a week.
You can go to futureinfinance.co.uk. If that's not where you're checking us out, you can check us out anywhere that you listen to your podcasts. I offer all of the help with your CeMAP studies. So I offer what's conventionally called a fast track course. I call it a masterclass. You sit with me Monday to Friday and I get you through your exam. I am so confident that I'll get you through your exam. I offer a 100% money back guarantee with all of my products. I started this business because I could not get CeMAP qualified, and I went with a reputable provider and found it pretty shit, for lack of a better phrase. And now about 60% of my students also come from a reputable provider, and they couldn't get qualified and they end up throwing money at me. So my challenge is to try and reach those people before they spend £1,200 with me, and they come to me first. But I work a little bit different. So I work very much on a one-to-one basis, small group sessions, one-to-one sessions, slide into my WhatsApp messages, send me voice notes, give me a call, that level of support, which isn't for everybody. Because if you just want to sit a week's course and sit an exam and not be bothered by the strange woman on the internet ever again, that's cool. Use somebody else. Because I am there to pester you to get qualified. Some people love it, some people hate it. So that's me. And Maria is here to help with all of the understanding of stuff, because I teach this every single day. It is my full-time job. And sometimes I talk about stuff like it's really obvious, not realising that actually ain't really obvious until you've learnt it. So yeah. Maria's here to keep me humble, I think is the word we used last time.
Like the bridge from the finance people to the muggle world.
There we go. That's exactly what Maria's here for. And I think, actually, we just jump straight in.
Sound? Let's go.
You want to do the
cue intro music?
Let's go. So, chapter 2 of the textbook is called Types of Borrower.
Ooh.
And actually, it's not a complicated title. It's exactly as it sounds. We are going to talk about the different types of people that get mortgages, the different reasons that people get mortgages. That's the basic stuff from this topic.
Bread and butter of CeMAP qualification.
Basically, yes, everything that you would need to know as a mortgage advisor.
Cool.
The textbook works off this principle, which I really like actually, and I don't say that ever, of person, property and purpose. So who is the person that wants the loan? What is the property that they want the loan for? And purpose, why do they want to buy that property? And all of those things sound really, really obvious, but actually everybody's circumstances are different.
Yeah.
So 98% of the clients that most people deal with might just be they want to buy their first house for them and their dogs, or their wife and kids, or their husband and kids, or their, I don't know, you get the point.
Yeah.
Not everybody falls into that category though, and that's what we're going to dig a little bit deeper into here. So if we start with person, we all know that everybody's circumstances are different, not just financially, but life circumstances. So I want to buy a 4-bedroom bungalow. That's what I want as a person. For no particular reason other than that's my personal preference. Your personal preference might be completely different.
I want to buy a penthouse.
There we go.
Flat thing on the top of us. I don't, but that's the literal opposite to the bungalow.
Yeah, it is. So
what is penthouse? Yeah, it's a penthouse.
Yeah. The word that the Grinch uses, one man's trash is another man's potpourri. That's the whole point of that. Some people might hate the idea of a bungalow. Some people might hate the idea of a penthouse. each to their own. Oh my God, I'm going to use this in every episode. Different strokes for different folks.
I'm so sorry.
There you
I
go.
can only apologise.
So person is, who are they and why do they want this mortgage? Is it to buy their own home? Is it to buy a second home? Is it to buy a business premises? Is it to buy offices for their business? Is it to rent out? So is it a buy to let mortgage?
So you need to understand why.
Their motive.
Yeah.
That's really, really important. Now, there's so much more digging that you would need to do as a mortgage advisor, but that is step number one. That is person. Property is kind of as simple as it sounds.
Yeah.
So what are they buying? Is it a house? Is it a bungalow? Is it a penthouse? Is it a farm? Is it a block of offices? Is it a chip shop? All of those things that you've got to think about. Now, I'm not going to dig too deep into it in this topic because this is literally what the entirety of your CeMAP 2 and 3 studies is going to cover. But every single set of circumstances is different from a mortgage perspective. So unless you work in mortgages already, you might not realise that it can be really, really difficult to buy a property that is above a shop. Might be a crystal shop, might be a chip shop, might be a laundrette. A lot of mortgage companies do not want to touch those apartments. Any idea why?
I mean, I can understand why a chip shop would be a fire risk, but just like a crystal shop or something that doesn't have heavy equipment, cooking stuff. Security, yes, but I think maybe not the security that you're thinking of. No, I was thinking literally you're more likely to break into a shop than you are a residential property, I'm assuming. I don't know. Never been a burglar.
Aren't we all glad for that, Maria?
Well,
so security is right, but it's security of the value of the property. So if you think about a nice town, Monmouth, we've been to Monmouth, we liked it there. Considered moving there once. It's fancy. You could buy a property above a crystal shop. There's one of those in Monmouth.
It's a really nice crystal shop as well.
It is, and that is probably going to kick up the price of the property.
Yeah.
However, what if the crystal shop goes online, closes it down, and instead it reopens as a brothel?
Technically illegal, but it could just be a sex shop.
Sex shop. Are brothels illegal?
Prostitution is illegal.
Oh, well, I live in a well-rough area because they are
Brothels.
kicking about all over the place. Okay, segue. We'll move on swiftly.
But no, I'm here all the time and I have never seen a brothel.
Well, we will go on a tour after this recording.
Excellent. Well, you know how we get on next week. Okay. No, I understand. That does make sense because then...
But even a sex shop.
Yeah, would.
What about a Chinese takeaway? I mean, sometimes it's more delightful, sometimes not so much. It devalues the property that's above it and the lender has absolutely no control over what's going on the downstairs.
Right. Unless it's... I was going to say, would it be... no, we're getting into very muddy water. I was going to ask about the whole thing being sold as a unit, but we're talking about literal standalone residential property.
Yeah.
Okay, no, that does make sense. I can see why it would be a headache. It's just an added... When there are so many literal suburban streets and apartment buildings that are specifically for flat living, I can understand why, as a lender, you just be like, we don't need to do that.
Yeah, and that's the difference. So the big banks, like the Lloyds, Santander, I'm not quoting from experience with these, I'm just throwing out the big ballers in banks. They are going to be less inclined to deal with those types of properties because they can't be bothered to bother their arse because they have the monopoly of everybody else.
The bottom line just says it's not worth their time or energy.
Exactly. So from experience, when I used to work at the broker, we used to have clients that would come in who would want to buy those new build glass-fronted apartments, city centre, so I'm talking like Manchester, Sheffield, wherever.
They're above shops.
They're above shops. Very often they'll have like a Starbucks or a Nando's on the bottom floor, which for most people it's like, I live above a Starbucks and a Nando's, I'm never going to need to do a food shop ever again. Some lenders won't touch it. And people don't realise that when you go for a mortgage, you just think, well, it's a property, I'll buy it.
Yeah, I can see the one up above, the local charity shop. I can understand. A high rise above...
It's not always. That is a particular.
No, that is. I can. But they're so common now. They're so common.
So there's a bunch of other things that go into that mix of, okay, is this property a problem? And we will get on. We'll get into all of that in the next 27 episodes that we're going to do for this particular season. I know I said that out loud and thought, oh my God, that's a lot of work. But the idea is we've looked at the person, we understand why they want a mortgage.
Yeah.
Now we've looked at the property. The last one is purpose. So obviously they want that mortgage to buy that property, but that's not every single reason that you would ever go to a mortgage company.
No.
What about people who decide they want to renovate their kitchen and they want to, we call it equity release, but it's not equity release. So a pretty common term in mortgages is I want to release some equity in my home to build an extension, to get a new kitchen, to travel the world, to get married, whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
To consolidate your debt, that's another popular one.
Yeah.
But actually, whilst, yes, you are releasing equity because you are remortgaging the bit that you've already paid off, that's where that money comes from.
Okay.
It is not equity release, because equity release is a scheme for older people who sell their houses.
So essentially it's like a remortgage.
Yeah, it's additional borrowing is a better phrase. So if you hear equity release, unless it is for somebody who is over the age of like 60-ish, that age can vary, I want you to forget equity release, and I want you to think either additional borrowing or a further advanced, because that is how your textbook is going to refer to it.
Okay, right. So it's just similar idea, different purpose, age group.
Yeah. So again,
Cool.
Equity release we have a whole topic on, so we don't need to stress about it.
Yeah, so this will come down to what your client is looking for, the purpose of.
Yeah. So your customer might ring and say, I found my dream home, I want to buy it, I'm a first time buyer, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing, in which case, cool, they want a mortgage for a property. Mm-hmm. That's step one.
Straight up.
Your customer might ring and say, I hate where I live and I found another property and I need to mortgage this new property. And then it's a whole different conversation of, okay, can we move your current mortgage product to your new house?
Yeah.
That's called portability, but that's not always an option with every mortgage product.
Okay.
Or do we need to hook you up with a separate mortgage? In which case, that's a whole different battle.
Yeah.
Or somebody might come and go, look, I've paid off a chunk of my mortgage. I want some of that money out to renovate or to do whatever. That's a further advance or additional borrowing. So those are the purposes that people might get a mortgage.
Yep. Makes sense.
You can even dig even further into it. So if you're buying this property, is it for you to live in? Is it for a relative to live in? Or are you going to rent it out? Again, 3 completely different sets of circumstances. But what you know is this person wants a mortgage to buy this property, but we've not figured out why. And that why will impact every single decision you make as a mortgage advisor going forward.
That's really interesting because, you just be like, well, they want to buy a property and that's it.
Yeah.
Just help to buy the property.
Yeah.
No, you need to know.
You literally
everything.
need to know everything. And that's why a good mortgage advisor has good conversations with their clients. And they basically end up becoming their house bestie because you have to know everything. That's why.
So if you want to be a mortgage advisor, you better like talking to people.
Better be friendly. Yeah.
And real nosy.
Yeah, exactly. And that's purpose.
Yeah.
So the next few things that the textbook moves on to talk about is something called a high net worth customer. We touched on this in CeMAP 1, or we will do when we redo CeMAP 1 and get to the new bits.
Okay.
So first of all, I guess, why is a high net worth customer even worth mentioning? When we talk about affordability for mortgages,
Yeah.
you'll see that there's a particular routine that most lenders follow. 98% of lenders will go, okay, let's times your annual salary by 4.
Yep.
That's how much you can borrow. That's how much you can get a mortgage for.
Standard.
That's a rough estimate. It doesn't always work that way, but that's just an example. When it comes to high net worth clients or really fucking rich people, everything changes. There's loads more flexibility. There's
So it's
loads more things
literally
that
like
you can do.
real life is if you're redonkulously rich, doors
Anything
are open
goes.
to you that mere mortals can only just glimpse.
Exactly that. So what you need to know for the purposes of your CeMAP exam is that a high net worth borrower is classed as somebody who either earns over £300,000 a year after tax, so net,
Right.
or has over £3 million worth of assets after tax. They have to have one of those two things.
So technically, if I owned a £3 million house
Uh-huh.
or a £5 million house,
Yeah.
would I be considered a high net worth because it's over the 3 million band?
If it was unmortgaged, because otherwise you don't own
so
it,
that's
it's debt.
sticky. Okay,
Yeah.
interesting.
Also, it would have to be over 3 million because there at some point there would be a tax liability. So whether it's when you sell it, you might have to pay capital gains tax, whatever that is.
Okay, so but the textbook will provide. guidance.
If you're going to get a question on a high net worth borrower, it's going to be something along the lines of, and I only know this from feedback from many, many students, you're welcome. What are the numbers attached to a high net worth client? So we know it's...
So you just need to know the thresholds.
£300,000.
So it's the threes.
Yeah.
3 million.
After tax.
Assets. 300,000 net.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's you should focus on those, because at that point, when you're qualified, if you are qualifying and aiming to be a mortgage advisor, then obviously the questioning is going to come down to, okay, what does that look like in terms of your actual
finances,
home, car, assets, salary, that's all going to be done as part of your 3Ps search.
Exactly. One thing it's really important to realise is, so let's say me and you were going in to buy a house together. And
Not far off the realms of possibility.
No, that's and we each earned £150,000 a year after tax.
Wouldn't count.
Wouldn't count. It is per
One
person.
Right.
But if we were going to buy a house together and you earned that amount and I didn't, we could still get the leeway as a high net worth couple, even though it's just you, so you match the affordability.
Mm-hmm.
I can tag along on your coattails and we can get that flexible affordability assessment together.
Yeah, but I mean, so long as one of you, because I mean, you wouldn't want to put the barrier shouldn't be in place just because you have a partner. So because if I was doing it by myself,
you'd be clear.
I'd be clear. Yeah. So you're saying I meet the criteria by myself, but because we're looking together, it would be an unfair.
Yeah, but what a lot of my students have said is, yeah, but how is that then fair? Because if they split up, the person who's not the high net worth client can't match that affordability. That is the same for every single mortgage situation. Yeah. How many people are in a relationship where if their partner upped and fucked tomorrow, they would be able to afford the mortgage on their own?
That's why most divorcing couples
have to sell their house.
Assets are sold.
Exactly.
Because you went into it as a couple without getting into the nitty gritty of it. It was your combined appeal as a lower risk generally, blah, 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 that the banks went, yeah, sound.
Exactly. So that
makes total sense.
Actually everything that we need to know about high net worth clients. So I don't think that one's too bad.
No.
The next one is, what is a professional customer?
Ooh. I'm assuming it's not someone who's just employed.
No.
That's disappointing. And no, I'm out.
A professional customer is somebody else who has a CeMAP qualification.
No way.
Or works as a mortgage advisor.
So someone oh my God, it's like the mafia. You're in the profession.
Yeah. What's somebody called it the other day? Work in the finance space. The space. If you work in the finance space,
that's horrible.
As a qualified mortgage advisor, you are classed as a professional customer as long as you have been doing it for at least 12 months.
Interesting. Okay, so the rules are different?
Yes, the way that you can treat a professional customer and both a high net worth client is you can assume that they have a level of knowledge that your average Joe would not have.
Really? Okay.
So if a professional customer, it's very likely that somebody who deals in mortgages, if they're coming to you for a mortgage, it's because you have access to a mortgage that they can't get to for whatever reason. Right. It might be that they want this mortgage with Barclays Bank. They can't get it as a broker, but you work for Barclays Bank.
They know that you can.
They can ring and say, look, I'm a professional client. I just need this product. Can you just do it? Now, we're going to get onto that because it's classed as an execution-only service. And ignore that for now because we'll cover it in a different topic. But the idea is if somebody who is a high net worth client or a professional customer comes to you and asks for something, you can almost skip a couple of steps.
Because the assumption is that they're not a muggle.
They're not a money muggle. They have an assumed level of knowledge. So, professional client, just to recap, has to have a qualification that they can evidence.
Yep.
They have to have been working in the sector for a minimum of 12 months.
So those would be the checks that you would do.
Yep.
To confirm that, and then you can just...
They are also the questions you're most likely to get asked in your CeMAP exam.
Pay attention.
Pause for effect.
Okay. So what is a professional customer? That's what you're going to be asked.
Or the question you're most likely to get asked will be, because don't forget, guys, it's multiple choice. It might be something along the lines of, Joe calls and asks for a mortgage. He says he works for a mortgage broker for how many months? He has been working with this mortgage brokerage since the 7th of July. Today's date is this date. Would he fall under the professional customer
Right,
treatment.
okay, so scenario-ish type.
It's likely to be painted like that. So just remember that 12-month period. Alan, the last two things we're going to talk about for this topic is something called a mortgage prisoner, which I am going to ask you to make a guess on because I'm going to be tickled by your answer, and a vulnerable customer. That's what we're going to finish today on. So let's start with mortgage prisoner, Maria.
I mean, a mortgage isn't a sentient thing, so it couldn't take someone prisoner physically.
Can I ask you to speak up a little bit for the microphone?
Sorry, I was trying to reason logic through what a mortgage prisoner might be. I mean, my common sense would say someone who has been taken prisoner by their mortgage, but a mortgage isn't a physical thing, so it can't physically take you hostage. Prisoner, not hostage, whichever one of those.
Okay, so you're not far off the right line. So logic through that. So a mortgage cannot physically put you in prison.
So I have a mortgage.
Yeah.
I have somehow become a mortgage prisoner, which means that I am a prisoner of my mortgage, which means that I cannot escape my mortgage.
Correct.
But I don't see how that would happen, apart from, because can't you always sell your house and...
You can, so that's an exception.
Right, okay. I mean, maybe I don't want to sell my house.
You don't want to sell your house, so what do you do now? So
I don't know.
we spoke in the last episode about the financial crisis and about how that happened.
Yep.
And because of the financial crisis, a bunch more regulation came into place.
Yes.
The FCA came about.
Oh, yes.
And they wrote a book called the Mortgage Conduct of Business Sourcebook.
Oh, the MCOB.
MCOBs, that's
MCOBs.
it. MCOBs, they wrote that. And that was basically the regulatory framework for mortgages. It's the mortgage Bible. Everything that is in MCOBs you have to do as a mortgage advisor. Luckily, you don't have to read it. That's what your CeMAP exam is for.
Oh, okay. Do you have to have a copy of it?
I don't think so. I don't think it's like a spot check. We've called to check on your services and we want to check you've got MCOBs somewhere in this cupboard.
Check the top drawer of your motel bedroom cabinet. Do you have a Jehovah's Witnesses Bible in there?
That ran MCOBs from whatever date it came into effect, which I want to say might be 2009, but don't quote me on that. Fact check it, somebody on the internet that's going to berate me for getting it wrong. In 2016, they did a top-up bit of text.
Oh, that's nice.
Called a directive.
Right, yes.
Now, if this is the first time you're hearing directive, you are going to see this a lot in your CeMAP studies. The way that I explain it to people, because people see them and their heads fall off, which is absolutely normal.
Understandable.
If you see something like MCOB, so the Mortgage Conduct to Business Sourcebook, that is the OG. That is one of the Harry Potter books. One of the 8.
Okay.
Are there 8?
7.
7. Wow. I can't believe I got that wrong. 8 films, that's
oh,
what. Yeah. So MCOBs is one of the original Harry Potter series.
Okay.
And then further down the line, they released Magical Beasts and Where to Find Them. They released a book about Quidditch.
Is that the follow-up fan fiction, kids?
Yeah, but I think some of them were written by J.K. Rowling.
Okay, maybe not fan fiction then.
What
do they call it?
Classed
they're in the universe.
Yeah.
They're in the universe. Okay, so they're just like additional information.
Additional information, that's all the directive is.
Oh, okay, it's just a fancy word for it.
Yep.
Cool.
So think about Harry Potter. So we had the OG, we had the first Harry Potter book, Mortgage Conduct to Business
Foundation
Sourcebook.
canon.
Yeah. And then in 2016, they released an additional bit of text called the Mortgage Credit Directive.
To help follow up what was in there.
Yeah, with further regulatory stuff. That came out and it changed everything.
Oh.
It was a game changer. You're probably going to get asked about the date in your exam. It is the 21st of March 2016. That is the big date you need to remember. It's also the spring equinox.
Is the spring equinox on the same day every year?
Yeah, I don't
It
know.
is.
Somebody told me it was the spring equinox and I never checked it because she was
Okay.
very smart. She passed all of her exams first time round. I was not questioning Natasha. Anyway, 21st of March 2016, we had the Mortgage Credit Directive come in. What they did is they completely shifted the way that we checked affordability
Right.
for clients. So
Okay.
if you took out a mortgage before that date, you passed affordability.
Cool.
All affordability changed on that date. Now, if you were to go to remortgage, because of the new affordability rules,
Yeah.
you can't afford to remortgage.
Oh, shit.
So you are stuck in your original mortgage product
So
because you know you cannot afford a mortgage under the new affordability rules.
So does that mean if you're on a shit mortgage now?
You're in the shit mortgage. There's nothing that you can do outside of sell your house and move and finish your mortgage, because everything changed from an affordability perspective. So
Okay.
I use the example of lenders tend to just do 4 times your annual salary.
Yep.
That is a pretty accurate average. It is not a regulatory requirement though, so I don't want that to stick in anybody's brains. But that came in from the Mortgage Credit Directive. Prior to that,
It wasn't.
you could borrow more. So now those people whose incomes haven't gone up exponentially, don't have any more money to put in,
Right.
they've come to the end of their fixed rate term after 2016 and they can't switch because they can't afford it on paper.
So what do?
You stay with your current mortgage product, which means it will probably switch you to what's called a standard variable rate product. It's basically what all mortgages do once you reach the end of your fixed rate term. It tends to be more expensive, so people don't stay in the standard variable rate product.
They'll choose a different product.
But mortgage prisoners, will
Cannot.
stay in that standard variable rate because they can't go anywhere else.
Can't move to a different product.
If you ever watch those Sunday, Marie, you'll probably know what these Sunday morning shows are, because I imagine, only because I think Grant's probably going to watch them,
Yeah, probably.
where a politician stands on a stage and the audience berates them with questions. Why do you keep pouring shit into our rivers? What's it called? There's a particular Sunday programme where they air it.
I don't.
Cool, clearly we're both as clueless as each other. That's absolutely fine.
I mean, there was Prime Minister's Question Time, but that was a Wednesday afternoon, and it was the Houses of Parliament, so they just was basically
it wasn't
fucking a
that.
bunch
It
of
was-
Tory MPs self-congratulating each other.
It was an circle jerking. It was not
Yeah, that's
that. It was members of the public that would ask questions. I'm hoping somebody that listens to this is
But
gonna be
they
like,
do loads of panels, don't they?
yeah,
Yeah.
you
Okay.
always hear, what about mortgage prisoners? What are we doing about those people? Like, there's a
Really?
lot of people that are trapped in that situation. So that's what a mortgage prisoner is.
Okay. So you need to know about them for your CeMAP exam.
You need to know the date of the
date.
Mortgage Credit Directive and also what a mortgage prisoner
that created them.
is. 21st of March 2016.
Okay.
And the last thing we're going to talk about for this episode is vulnerable customers. Now, we have touched upon this before.
Yeah, we have.
And also, for you guys that didn't know, Maria works with me now, so we do a bunch of stuff together, and she puts a bunch of stuff together for me. So I know that you know what a vulnerable customer is.
Yeah.
A vulnerable customer is somebody who has a vulnerability, but we have that fixed in our head like it's somebody who has additional needs, or it's somebody who can't read, or maths is really poor. And yes, they would fall under a vulnerability category, or the elderly, they're another one.
Yeah.
They're not the only ones. So vulnerability can be short term, and that's what a vulnerable customer is are they in a massive amount of debt? Because if you are, you're vulnerable. Have you just lost a loved one? Because if you have, you're vulnerable. Have you just lost a job? Are you going through a separation?
It's anything that could, short or long term, heavily impact your decision-making ability.
That is a nice way of putting it.
Like something that, on any given Tuesday, it's an easy decision, but actually because you're dealing with the death of a loved one who passed away within the week, your normal scale is completely upside down.
Yeah.
Like it's, you've realised that you're actually in a shitload of debt or whatever it is, and your ability to make good decisions for the long term is impaired. So you have to know, especially in this industry, because you're dealing with people's finances, it's way more like being a therapist.
Yeah, it really is. And I think what people forget sometimes, because we just treat mortgages like it's something that everyone has, is that a mortgage is the single biggest financial decision 98% of people will make in their lifetime.
Huge.
It's massive. And if you are dealing with a vulnerability, we need to be aware of that. So the FCA, there was something called the Consumer Credit Directive, which we'll talk about in another topic. But basically the FCA came out and said, we don't think we're doing enough for our vulnerable customers, and we want to do more to identify vulnerability. So what you might find now, if you ring to open up like a savings account or a bank account or get a credit card, they'll ask you really personal questions, and you almost want to push back and be like, are you trying to chat me up? I don't understand what's happening. Yeah. Actually, what they're trying to do is spot vulnerability, because they have a regulatory requirement to do so, to look out for the best interest of their customers.
It's kind of like the fraud checks the bank asks, like, has blinked twice if someone's asked you to transfer this money for them. It's
exactly
a similar
that.
idea.
Yeah. But we will come on to more to do with why vulnerable customers are important in later topics. And I think actually that is all we have time for this episode. Thank you so much for tuning in, guys. I always say if you've listened to this and you've enjoyed it, or you've had questions, or I mean, if you've hated it, you can also tell me about that. Please let me know. Please reach out. I feel super lucky to say that this is my full-time job now, and I get to help people pass their CeMAP qualifications every single day. So please make sure you hit the subscribe button. You can do an automatic download thing. Go and check me out on Instagram, which is @futureinfinance, and everything is linked there, in fairness. You can also get access to over 15 hours worth of completely free study material on my website. If you are finding me through Instagram, which most people do, there's like a Linktree link. If you click through to that, it will direct you through to, it's free access to my e-learning platform. So you can buy the e-learning platform as a full package, but you can check it out for nothing. And like I said, I think there's 15 hours worth of material in there. Go and use and abuse that system, guys, because it is there for that reason. And I'm here to help if you need anything. Masterclass spaces are booking up actually for the rest of the start of this year. So my next 3 months worth of courses are almost fully booked. If you do want a space, check them out on the website. All my dates are there. And as always, I guess just a thank you. I've got nothing else.
Yeah, no.
That's
That's
everything.
about it.
Perfect. Well, in that case, thanks so much for tuning in, and we will catch you next week.